Well, welcome to this edition of Tools for Living Internet Broadcast. This is the second piece of a section of training videos on rightly dividing God's Word, the second part of a sub-series on eisegesis. The first one we talked about had to do with observing the text. You really should listen to the first one first, and then join me for this one. But pause the video and read Ephesians 5:22 through 33. We're using that text to practice some of these counter moves to eisegesis on. And so with having listened to the first video on eisegesis and having read the text, now we're ready to begin, okay? The second counter move is you must thoroughly interrogate the text. One of the great disciplines of Bible study is questioning the text, asking lots of questions and digging the answers out of the text. Remember, we're trying to leave our baggage at the door. We're trying to leave our beliefs, our preconceived ideas, our pre-understood conclusions about this text or about the Bible at the door, and come and say, what does the text say? What does it say there? And what is going on in this text? And let's dig up as much as I can. So we do that through interrogation. Now, let me give you some examples of questions. First of all, we start with the who questions. Who's in there? Is God in the text? What do we learn about God in the text? Who's the author of this text? And what do we know about this author from other texts of the Bible? Who's the audience? Who would have been the first people to read this text? When would they have lived? What do we know about that time? So whether it's an epistle and you're dealing with Gentile Christians, or an epistle that deals with Jewish Christians, or is it a letter written to Jews who are in the Mosaic covenant at the time? What do we know about the audience that will help us to make sure we're getting what's being said? We're putting the context together. So the who questions come first, and then the what questions. What is the relationship between the author and the recipient of the text? Well, in the book of Ephesians, we can learn from Acts that Paul did not plant this church. He's not the church planter. He's not in a church pastoral relationship to the Ephesian church like he is with the Galatians church or the Thessalonian church or the Philippian church. Okay? It's a little different. He is an apostle to all of them, but he was not the church planter at Ephesus. So that's important to know. He speaks differently to those churches that he himself planted than he does to the other ones. He's got more relationship background with them than he does with the Ephesian church. So those are just some ideas. What is the relationship of the author to the recipients? What was the situation that the author was writing to? Is it clearly spelled out at the beginning of the letter? And what does the text you're looking at, in this case the marriage text, have to do with the overall theme of this letter? What was the religious and political situation? Ephesus was a part of Greece. What can we learn about Greece in that day? What can we learn about the political and religious situation by just in reading the book of the letter to the Ephesian church as a whole? There's things you can pull out of there when you're looking for it. What is the whole that this text is a part of? What role does this text play in the overall theme of the book from beginning to end? All great questions. Then you got the where questions. Where is this taking place? Is there any significance to that? Sometimes Paul is writing from a jail. That kind of colors what's being said, especially when he's writing to churches that are under persecution. You see, so the where questions can help out. Where was it written? Where does the audience live? Are they in Jerusalem? Are they in Greece, Corinth, Rome? Those are all altogether different situations that all play into what you're going to pull from the text. Then the how questions. How does this text fit in the context around it? How would the text have been received, heard, understood by that original audience? How does this relate, this text, the marriage text, relate to the text following it or the text preceding it? Okay? That's a very important question to ask. So that's interrogation of the text. And when you begin to do that, you start coming up with a clearer picture of what this text is saying. Now, let me give you what I've come up with by just doing a lot of questioning of the text. I've learned that the Apostle Paul is writing the letter to the Ephesians. They are new Gentile believers in a church that he didn't plant or develop. The Ephesians came to Christ out of a materialistic, greedy, and immoral culture of Ephesus. The passage is an area of application. The marriage passage is an area of application to the instruction for them back in chapter 4 to walk no longer as the Gentiles also walk. Okay? Paul's looking for a change in the way husbands are relating to wives and wives to husband from what is going on all around them in that culture. Their culture is walking in immorality. You can see that in the beginning of chapter 2 and in the middle of chapter 4, characterized by selfish greed, and he's calling them to a lay your life down kind of living. And then the marriage passage is simply one area of example of how to apply that exhortation and to live differently from the world around them. We also learned that is part of a string of examples or areas of human relationships. Chapter 4 speaks to the parent-child relationship, how Christian fathers what's going on in the world around them. And then the master relationship follows that. Okay? So the marriage relationship is all a part of a string of relationships, of instructions for Christians' conduct in human relationships. And then lastly, we notice that following the relationship section of Ephesians 5:22 through 6:11 or through 6:9, there's the spiritual warfare passage. What does that say? Does that tell us that, hey, when you're going to try to change your life and live different from the world, you can expect spiritual warfare? See how that pulls together? All of that comes from interrogating the text and the text around the text so that we're getting the right message from what Paul is trying to communicate. Well, that's section 2, or the second piece of my teaching on countermoves to exegesis. Please join me for the third one. God bless.